Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful Monday afternoon. This is Britt's Fantasy Blitz, and I am your host, Britt Flinn. We have a ton of stuff to talk about today, but before we get into that, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the Fantasy Alarm and Better Sports Network YouTube pages so we can feed our families. The dogs and cats are hungry all the time. So we have a lot of stuff going on today. There's a ton of training camp news going around the NFL. There's a lot of drama surrounding running backs, and it seems like that's been the case for the past month. We also are going to talk about team win totals for the AFC East, and we're joined by very special guest, Jen Piacenti of SI.com and SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Over this last hour, there's been a ton of news and none of it good. Broncos receiver Tim Patrick apparently went down today at practice on a non-contact injury, screaming and holding his lower leg. He was later carted off, and it's come down the pipeline that they unfortunately believe that it is an Achilles injury. So not good for somebody who was thought to be one of the most athletic wide receivers in the entire room, and coming off an injury that kept him out of the entire last season. Uh, we hope the best for him, man. Speaking of Tyreek Hill, which we haven't, but we're going to. He's been struggling kind of to start training camp. Sports Illustrated's Omar Kelly's had some harsh words for him in his performance so far, saying that Hill has blended in and speculating that he's either being slowed by a nagging injury or his focus is off because of his off the field issues, and he's had a lot of drops. So I'm not typically one to back off of a player just because of a bad training camp, especially a multi-time Pro Bowler. But with all his talk about retirement and then his off the field issues, I'm keeping a close eye on this situation. Another guy that we've been very excited about is Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson, who apparently underwent a medical procedure today to correct a deviated septum that will keep him out of practice today, but they're hoping that he will be able to return to practice tomorrow. There's a lot up in the air whether or not Richardson is going to be the starter for the Colts when the week one starts. So it's going to be very interesting to see if he actually loses practice and how that affects him going forward. In other running back news, which there is a ton of, as I alluded to, Dalvin Cook visited the Jets this weekend, but he still hasn't signed, which is a little peculiar. Robert Saleh, though, was apparently very impressed, saying that yesterday was awesome, that he had a really good meeting, and that he turned me into a believer. Obviously, he left without a deal, but it's a sign that things are heating up and that the first domino is about to fall in these big name free agent running backs. In other quarterback news, Kyle Shanahan said that Brock Purdy had no arm troubles in camp after returning from his UCL surgery. If he's healthy, I really don't see much of a competition for the starting job. But Sam Darnold is sneakily putting together a good camp, so maybe he can make a play for that backup spot. Sticking with the 49ers, Brandon Ayuk is getting a ton of praise from his training camp. It seems that it doesn't matter who's throwing him the ball, that he's been a focal point of this offense. He's being heavily targeted, and he caught 3 touchdowns in yesterday's practice. With Deebo Samuel still going as wide receiver 16 in aggregate ADP and Ayuk going as wide receiver 29, he should be one of the value plays at wide receiver that you have your eyes on as we get closer to our fantasy football drafts. New Eagle DeAndre Swift is apparently also being primarily used in the passing game, which is very interesting to me because the Eagles were dead last season in targets to the running back position. So are they looking to change their system now that Shane Steichen is gone, or is Swift just going to have a huge decline in snaps? So that is something that we also need to watch. A rookie who's making waves in camp is Dalton Kincaid, and reports are glowing about his performance thus far in camp. His highlight reel from the weekend shows him moving more like a wide receiver than a tight end. People say that Buffalo is apparently fast tracking him to have a big role in this offense. and he's on the field for almost every play. There is a narrative with some facts to back it up that rookie tight ends typically struggle to make an impact in fantasy. But we've seen in recent years with guys like Kyle Pitts that if they're put into a receiving role that they can produce. And Kincaid was seen at the NFL draft as the best pass catcher by some, not just the best tight end, the best pass catcher overall. And at an ADP of tight end 13, I think that he's someone you want to keep your eyes on. And somebody that we are keeping our eyes on, but in kind of a negative way, Jamison Williams has just kept getting in trouble. He apparently threw a punch at the Lions practice today after multiple dropped passes and struggling against undrafted rookie corner Starling Thomas. His ADP is already down because of his suspension, but at this point, you kind of have to start wondering if he's worth taking a chance on at all. Deneric Prince is apparently having a standout camp with the Chiefs in place of the injured Isaiah Pacheco. A Chiefs analyst has gone so far to say that Prince's roster spot is written in ink. I know that we were trying to make Clyde Edwards-Helaire a thing after coming back and with the Pacheco injury, but he's disappointed year after year. So this could be an interesting training camp battle to watch. All right, that should be most of the camp news for today. Now getting into a little popcorn before we dive deeper. And thank you guys, Toronto Dave, for being with us. Thank you, everybody, for watching and being in the chat. Another running back has decided to retire from the NFL, and that's Sony Michel. He just re-signed with the Rams a week or two ago. And in the wake of this news, the Rams didn't opt to go sign one of these big name free agent running backs. They instead signed Royce Freeman. So with all the free agent running backs on the market who are available, they didn't even bring one in to work out. I think that this seems to make it clear that they are sticking with Cam Akers. Now on to the big running back drama with Jonathan Taylor. In case you've been living under a rock, there is some major drama happening in the Colts running back room. Jonathan Taylor apparently met with Jim Irsay to kind of air his grievances with how his contract was being handled. They met for about an hour. And after he was told he wasn't getting extended, he then requested a trade. He's been on the PUP list, but technically the ankle injury he suffered shouldn't still be holding him back. The typical timeline for that type of injury is 2 to 4 weeks, with even the most severe type of ankle injuries only taking 3 months to come back from. The PUP tag can only play out for so long in this situation. And I think that's why the Colts are now considering putting him on the non-football injury list. They say that he suffered a back injury while training on his own that he reported on Tuesday. But the problem with that NFI tag is to retroactively put him on that list. The Colts would have to allege that Taylor failed to disclose the injury. And there are a few hoops that they have to jump through to do that. So I'm not sure if this is just posturing or if this is something that they are actively looking at doing. When he heard the news, Taylor tweeted back in these epic social media clapbacks saying that he doesn't hurt. He never told anyone he hurts. And whoever was reporting that needed better sources. Then you throw in Jim Irsay's just frankly bizarre comments about how the NFL will move on without him, without Taylor, that even when they die, it's all a very messy situation. And if Taylor does threaten a holdout and is placed on the NFI, he could lose up to a year in salary, and his contract would be pushed through the end of 2024, potentially forcing his free agent eligibility to the end of 2025 if he's franchise tagged. Now, we didn't have a lot of clarity on this earlier, but this afternoon at training camp, backup Zach Moss suffered a broken arm at practice, making him unavailable for at least 6 weeks. So I can see this getting very interesting, even messier than it already is. So we have to keep an eye on that. In other running back news, which seems to be all we're talking about today, the Seahawks have some real depth problems going on in their running back room. Kenneth Walker missed practice for a third straight day yesterday with what was deemed a groin injury. And to make matters worse, the rookie standout Zach Charbonnet is out indefinitely with a shoulder injury. Now, it seems like Seattle may just be exhibiting caution with Walker since last year he missed with a sports hernia. It's a groin. They don't want to aggravate it. But Charbonnet's injury is more of a mystery and something to be a little more concerned about as they await word from team doctors. With the two of them out, this leaves the seventh round rookie Kenny McIntosh and veteran DJ Dallas as the only running backs actively on their roster. So, depending on the severity of these injuries and how long these guys are out, I think we could see some of these free agents take a trip to Washington and work out for Seattle in case Walker and or Charbonnet aren't able to go in the early weeks of the season. We've already seen these free agent running backs visit. For one, Ezekiel Elliott visited the Patriots this weekend. And although he wasn't offered a contract immediately, he was spotted out to dinner with Mac Jones on Saturday night. If they miss out on Dalvin Cook, this looks like a promising second option. We can talk about Zeke's decline all that we want, but the fact is he's still one of the best pass blockers in the league, and bringing him in would provide some much needed help on an offensive line with a ton of question marks. In other running back news, again, this has just become the running back show. Alvin Kamara has alluded to the fact that he is set to meet with Roger Goodell after settling his criminal and civil cases to tell his side of the story. I'm not really quite sure what side of the story he can tell that the video doesn't, but depending on how this goes, we should know of a suspension status sooner rather than later. So that's something to keep your eye on, especially as Kamara is still regarded as a value in ADP right now. The Jets. Oh, the Jets. We can't get away from them. Aaron Rodgers addressed Sean Payton's comments about Nathaniel Hackett this weekend, saying that the comments were out of line and then pulling the Will Smith, keep my coach's name out of your mouth line. The Jets and Broncos are scheduled to face off in week 5. And with the offseason drama, this has already become one of the most hyped up matchups of the season. And if this back and forth continues on, I cannot wait to see how that goes. So that's it today for most of the news. If you haven't heard me mention it before, all of these training camp battles and injuries will be updated in the corresponding articles in the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide because it is a living draft guide. We don't want to give you outdated information. We don't want to print a magazine and send it to you and have, somebody get hurt, somebody get signed that changes all the rankings. So we're updating this draft guide continuously with the most relevant information as it becomes available up until the NFL season starts. To get the draft guide and the newly released cheat sheet together, go to fantasyalarm.com/draft guide. You can purchase it by itself for $26.99. And like I mentioned, we also have the fantasy football cheat sheet that just got released. It's got everything you need for your snake and auction leagues, including linear rankings, dynamic tier rankings, auction values. If you just want that and don't want the whole draft guide, you can pick that up at fantasyalarm.com/cheat sheet today. Our best deal, though, and I can't tell you how good of a deal this is our All Pro package. Our All Pro package gives you access to everything, all of our sports, all of our tools, our draft guide, our Discord. It's got everything. You can sign up today at fantasyalarm.com/allpro, and you can start out with a 7-day free trial, take it for a spin, see how you like it, and then get access. And might I mention that the DraftKings Week 1 slate did just drop. So if you want to get started on your research early, sign up for that All Pro package today. All right, while we wait on Jen to get in here, we're going to take a little break, and we will be back to talk about sleepers and busts and get it propping with Jen Piacenti.
Kendre Miller fan. He's running back 46 in the Fantasy Pros Championship right now at the end of the 11th round. I want you to talk a little bit about him from both standpoints. Number one, from redraft. He's in the backfield, same backfield as Alvin Kamara, who we talked about in the first hour, and then obviously Jamal Williams. But as far as dynasty goes too, what should you be doing now if you're a dunce like me and missed on Miller? What kind of offers should you be making for Kendre Miller in your dynasty leagues right now?
Well, the problem now is the news worked against you, right? In the sense that you know that there's a suspension looming. We don't know what that suspension is. So do you try to go after him prior to the suspension, or do you wait to see how long it is?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the higher the suspension is, the more expensive Kendre is going to be. It gives him an opportunity. We saw Kamara, you don't have to go farther than New Orleans. We saw Kamara take advantage. I remember they brought in Adrian Peterson They had what's his name, Mark Ingram.
Yep.
Right, and then they brought in Kamara, and everyone's like, "There's no way Kamara's gonna be relevant year one," and he smashed because talent comes through. These teams want to win now. They're going to put the best players out there. Kendre Miller comes off of a 1,400-yard season. Like, one thing for me, bulky in fantasy, is if you showed me you did it, I'm going to believe you.
Mm-hmm.
This whole upside thing where you've never done it, I'm over all of that. Like, tight end position I talk about often, that's why I don't invest in rookie tight ends. I'll pay the price for a Kelsey. I'll pay for a Kittle when I know they're going to smash for me, right? Running back, you're looking for talent. You're looking for proven. This guy's proved it. And progression. You look at his career in college, he's progressed every year in the receiving game, in the rushing game. There's something about when you watch him play, and sometimes it's not, I don't have a great stat for you or anything, but there's certain guys when I see him play, something kind of, and he's one of the guys when I started watching his tape and just seeing what he can do. I think he can be an all-around workhorse. He had 224 touches in his last season in college. So, look, we talk about New Orleans. We don't know what this offense is going to look like. They have a new quarterback. They have everything, a whole new situation there. He could come in with Kamara out and just take over that backfield right away.
Yeah, we're getting it popping here on a Monday, guys. We're back with Britt's Fantasy Blitz. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got a busy Monday. We just talked some training camp news and some developments that have gone on around the league. And to get it propping on this Monday, we are going to welcome in a very special guest, Jen Piacenti of SportsIllustrated.com and SiriusXM Fantasy Radio. Jen, how are you?
I am good. It's Monday. It is officially fantasy football season. I'm going down only 3 baseball articles per week.
I know. I was going to say, your article just came out, right, in the Athlon Sports magazine about props, and you've been crushing it with baseball. But when football starts, that's when it hits.
That's drive the bus, they say. Yeah, the Athlon. If you guys have a chance to pick up the Athlon Sports magazine, it is full of info, lots and lots of articles in there. Fabiano and I wrote a lot. Kyle Wood wrote some as well, and it's pretty stacked. So if you have a chance, again, when things go to print, some of it's a little bit out of date because we had to write this over the summer, right? We didn't know that Jonathan Taylor was holding out potentially or on the injured list or whatever they're doing. So it's slightly a little bit behind, but it's pretty cool. If you like to have paper in your hand and cheat sheets and lists, you can check that out.
I am a big paper fan. I still use legal pads and notebooks to write all my notes on. So that magazine sounds right up my alley.
Everything.
Yes. See, I knew that we were soul sisters, Jen. I knew it. But let's talk some sleepers and busts, because I know you've been very deep involved in baseball, like we said, but about a week and a half ago, you did put out a sleepers and busts article, which I loved. I think it had some great points in it. And today, after the Jameson Williams punching people news, I think that your sleeper is dead on. So who's your sleeper?
Yeah, Sam Laporta is my sleeper. Listen, Jameson Williams, Fabiano and I, and Lindsay Rhodes and I all had this debate like a few months ago. Like, would we want Jameson Williams on our dynasty team? My answer was just no. I'd rather have like Jacoby Myers. Not exaggerating, because I do not trust this kid. We've never seen him take a real NFL snap. Okay, we saw him play like one game. We have not seen him in the NFL, and he's got this gambling suspension. Okay, now he's throwing punches at camp. Listen. Sam Laporta was one of the top touted tight ends in the draft. Their coach is a tight end. They're going to need receiving weapons if we really believe they're going to be so good. And gosh, you can get him. He's practically free. He's practically free in your draft. So if you don't like to, take a Kelsey early, take a Mark Andrews early, Sam Laporta is just a beautiful target. If we all believe so much in the Lions, and apparently we all do, according to the sports books, then Sam Laporta has to be a part of that.
Yeah. And I think also that even though people have caught on a little bit, I think he's moved up 1 or 2 spots. He's still so incredibly cheap. It's insane.
This whole rookie tight ends don't do well in their first year. Guys, we're not talking about history. We're talking about now, and everybody's situation is individual to them. There's a couple guys this year. I also had this debate with Fabiano. I believe that 2 rookie tight ends could finish in the top 12. I don't even believe that that's like some kind of exaggeration or wishful thinking. You've got Dalton Kincaid over in the Bills offense. They got to
Yeah.
throw the ball to somebody. Again, we think the Bills are going to be good. Kincaid's going to operate like a receiver. So, there's a couple guys out there that have a lot of potential this season, but Sam Laporta, you're getting better value than you are for Dalton Kincaid.
That's very true. And to your point about the rookie tight ends, I think that people look at them and say, well, they don't have success, but they're looking at it kind of in a vacuum. They're looking at, they're coming in behind veterans, they're blocking more, they're doing this. These 2 guys aren't. These 2 guys have a clear path to receiving work in both of these offenses that are supposed to be high powered. So I'm with you. It's kind of going to be like the Kyle Pitts situation, I think, in his first year. People forget he had over 1,000 yards. If he would have just gotten 2 or 3 more touchdowns, he would have made a run for overall tight end 1. So I think people are looking into this too much. So I am with you there. I'm also with you on your bust, not just because of a potential holdout, but because of the state of his offense as a whole. So who's your bust for this season?
It is Josh Jacobs. And as soon as I say that, of course, I took him in the Battle of the Sexes League that we're playing in because of where I took him. I felt okay. But, this guy, Josh Jacobs, he finished number 1 running back overall last season. That is not going to happen again. It's a completely different situation with Jimmy Garoppolo under center. People are not going to be afraid of Jimmy Garoppolo. It's just not going to happen. They're going to be able to stack the box versus Jacobs. Words out. They know what the situation is. Jacobs, on top of that, possible holdout. Also, have we ever really seen him be healthy for a full season? Just last year, he's always had little, dings are going to come up. So I'm not saying that he's injury prone. I'm just saying he's not going to finish as RB1 again. Now, last year, he was the steal of the fantasy draft season. Jamal Williams, they were just amazing bargains if you got them. That's not going to be the case this year because people are drafting Josh Jacobs to be Josh Jacobs of 2022. And I don't think you're going to get Josh Jacobs of 2022. You're still going to get a good running back. You're still going to probably get more than 1,000 yards, pretty good at 6-7 touchdowns minimum. I think all that's great, but I'm not going to take that in the second round.
Yeah, there's too much risk there for me. And that offensive line has so many question marks on it. You can say that, yes, the games that these guys played, they were good, but they barely played any games. There's such a small sample size in that offensive line. And yeah, and they play the AFC East, and the AFC West is super tough this season. So I'm totally with you on there. I think people are living in the past. But speaking of living in the past, you have a comeback player that had a very horrible year last year that I'm also in on as having a comeback season. So who's your comeback player?
Okay, is it Russell Wilson's?
It is.
Is Russell Wilson one from this article? Okay, because there's always a few comeback players. So Russell Wilson. Listen, what's amazing is everybody talks about how terrible Russell Wilson is, but if you actually look at the stats, he was ranked 7th, according to Next Gen Stats, as a deep passer. And throughout his career, he has been an incredible deep passer. So he was holding on to the ball a little too long. Look, Sean Payton should help fix that. There should be more play action. I think he knows how to utilize the skill set of his quarterback a lot more than poor Nathaniel Hackett. And I won't get into the whole fight that's going on right now. But the fact is, Russell Wilson can't get any worse. He just can't get any worse. He's going to be better. Sean Payton will make sure of it. And maybe they'll run more of a West Coast offense. Maybe it'll be a few shorter targets downfield. But that will be to help open up that deep passing game, which is where Russell Wilson really excels. So I'm actually quite excited because, again, he can't get any worse. Where you're drafting him right now, he can only get better. And yeah, let's ride.
And I love that. They were talking about it on Good Morning Football, like how they haven't heard from Russell Wilson this offseason. And they're like, is he still even going with the Let's Ride motto? Like, is that even a thing? Or is Sean Payton like, no, let's put that to bed? Uh, but I do think you're right. Historically, Sean Payton has done wonderful things with his offense. And he also brought in Joe Lombardi, which is going to be just wheels up, I think. I don't think they're going to, have a massive 180 turnaround, but you're right.
No,
He can't get worse. He can't
he
get
can't get worse.
worse. But bringing this full circle to a little bit of the Broncos Jets drama, your top late round quarterback had some choice words to say to Sean Payton, and that's Aaron Rodgers.
Don't you love that about Aaron Rodgers? I mean, like all of a sudden he's gone off to the Jets. He's hanging with Sauce Gardner. He's palsy with Garrett Wilson. He doesn't mind the rookies. He is backing up his coaches. Everything about Aaron Rodgers in New York is what I'm sure people in Green Bay wanted Aaron Rodgers to be. But you know what? It's freaking cold in Green Bay, and he just wasn't. Let me tell you, I lived in Wisconsin for 3 months. I lived in Wisconsin for 3 months. I did a Christmas show, 9 shows a week. It was flipping freezing. I think I would have been a little disgruntled too if I were Aaron Rodgers. It just, it's hard. I don't know. I actually love Green Bay fans and I loved being in Wisconsin. They were awesome. But there is definitely something different going on right now in New York with Aaron Rodgers. And this is a 3-time MVP. Okay. He's got Garrett Wilson, who is phenomenal. It's going to be fantastic for him. Plus, he's got all his security blankets. He's got, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb. He's got all his booze. So he's going to be fine. Plenty of weapons. Breece Hall, perhaps Dalvin Cook, and an incredible defense and a team that has absolutely bought in on him. And when a quarterback takes a pay cut to make it a 2-year deal, that he's in. And I absolutely, maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid, or the Ascai. What is the drug he takes?
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca? Maybe I'm drinking
Yeah.
ayahuasca. I don't know. But yeah, I think he's going to have a Tom Brady-esque resurgence. And I think that's the blueprint for him, right? You saw Tom Brady his entire career with the Patriots, and there was all that debate. Well, was it the Patriots? Was it Bill Belichick? Or was it Tom Brady? Tom Brady goes to Tampa Bay, immediately wins a Super Bowl. No, I'm not saying the Jets necessarily win a Super Bowl this year. But hey, we know they've got 2 years. This is not a 1-year deal like Tom Brady signed each year that he signed. And I think Aaron Rodgers is going to go try to do the same thing. And people forget he was also playing with a thumb injury for a lot of last season, in addition to losing Devontae Adams. So the whole situation, he's reunited with said coach Nathaniel Hackett, who he said is one of his favorite people of all time. They obviously work well together. The guy won 2 MVPs with him at the old age of mid-30s. So there's plenty of time left for Aaron Rodgers to still be great. I know a lot of people hate him maybe for personal reasons or whatever. But he's not just old and aged out. He's just not. And none of the Jets quarterbacks last season had more than a 60% completion rate. None of them. Not Zach Wilson, not Joe Flacco, not Chris Streveler, not Mike White. Nobody had more than a 60% completion rate. You think that Aaron Rodgers is in just a little bit of an improvement? Oh, yeah, he is. And that whole offense is going to come up. Aaron Rodgers is absolutely my favorite late round target. He's going so late, and I'm scooping him up as my second QB everywhere I can.
And yeah, you mentioned the pay cut, getting Dalvin Cook. If that's a situation that they're looking into, I feel like they would be immediate Super Bowl contenders. It's kind of insane. And Aaron Rodgers has had problems with relying on rookies. That's basically all he had last year outside of Alan Lazard, in addition to playing with his thumb injury. And their bye week is fairly early. So if you're looking, for a best ball for like an FFPC situation where you're taking a quarterback with a later bye week, Aaron Rodgers could be your plug and play to kind of get you past that and advance you to the next round. So
I get it. He doesn't rush. I get it. But, there's also a lot of fantasy leagues where it's 6 points for a passing touchdown as well as 6 points for a rushing touchdown. I just don't care. The guy, I've bought in.
No, I'm with you. I completely agree. And this is why you're so good with your prop bets, because you are so dialed in and just so in tune with everything around the league. And you do a hell of a job with betting, not just on football, but baseball as well. I so enjoy your baseball bets. But I wanted to play a little game called Get It Proppin',
I like
and
games.
hit some betting lines for some players. Let's just pick your brain a little bit. And
Nice.
yeah, as we get into the season. So we're both Cowboys fans. So of course we have to start off with CeeDee Lamb. So his line is over 1,035 receiving yards at negative 135 on BetMGM. Does the change at offensive coordinator and possible offensive line woes scare you off this, or are you getting it profit?
Okay, so I'm getting it propping. And the number one clue as to why this is a good idea is the fact that it's minus 135. Okay, they're not paying you very well if this goes over. I mean, it's a pretty solid bet. It's a pretty sure bet. He is the clear number one in Dallas. And the idea that suddenly Michael Gallup or Brandon Cooks are going to take away that chemistry he already has with Dak, it's preposterous. It's not going to happen. I think they all could have good seasons. And if you read the article that came out this morning, it turns out that it's apparently more of an up-tempo offense. I think they're simplifying a little bit. I think sometimes Kellen Moore got a little too cute, you know? I mean,
Yep.
he did some good things. One of the better deep ball passers, again, I was talking about Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott. And CeeDee Lamb is going to work in the slot. He's also going to work outside. There's 1,000 ways that he can accumulate 1,049 yards, and he is absolutely going to do it. I would smash the over.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think last season he saw a lot of man coverage because of the state of the wide receiver room in Dallas, but he still really excelled even against man
Oh,
coverage. And now that they've got Brandon Cooks, they've got a healthy Michael Gallup back, it's going to draw that coverage away and he's going to be even more open. And I feel like he operates out of the slot the best. And now with
he
these
does.
two
And remember,
exterior,
no Dalton Schultz. So, right?
exactly.
So those shorter targets, they're going to add up.
Yes, I think he gets that easily. So I am with you there. Another polarizing guy has been Jerry Jeudy. Howard Bender and I have gone back and forth on who's going to be the wide receiver one in Denver, whether it's going to be Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton. I'm personally on Team Jeudy. His prop is over 874 and a half receiving yards at only negative 110 on BetMGM. So we know that you're high on Russell Wilson, but do you think it's going to be Jeudy or Cortland Sutton as wide receiver one?
So I don't think it's going to be either. I think they are going to pull a Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf situation, right? Which we've seen Russell Wilson support, where they're both going to be at 1,000 yards. And the difference is going to be Cortland Sutton is going to be that deep threat. I mean, Cortland Sutton was actually targeted more than Jerry Jeudy. It's just that Jerry Jeudy was able to catch more of his passes, and he was much more of a beast after the catch. So they're two completely different kinds of receivers, and I think they're going to end up being very even. And I'm taking the over on both of the receiving props because Cortland Sutton's is down in like the 600s. Last I checked. So if you're not taking the over on Jeudy and Cortland's all the way down, then you really don't believe in Russ. Like you don't think he's finishing the season. Cortland Sutton, let's see, 21.4% of the targets for the Broncos last season. Jerry Jeudy, 19.4%, 107 targets for Cortland, 98 for Jerry Jeudy. Actually, Cortland Sutton, you know, they're very similar to how they even finished. He had about 150 fewer yards than Jerry Jeudy. But this could go anyway because his air yard share was greater. Jerry Jeudy just had, you know, more yards after the catch, a little bit more, few more catchable passes. So yeah, I don't know that I can say one or the other, but I would say I would take the over on both the receiving props. And look, shame on me if this is bad 2 years in a row, but it's happening.
No, I love it. I think that that's great. And it does fall into that narrative that we think that the Broncos are going to be so much more improved than they were last season. And I feel like I'm just taking it too personally about Cortland Sutton because I did get burned. And that's why I can't buy into him. But your logic is impeccable. And I think that you may be right.
Except for maybe the part about Russ Wilson. I mean, you know, it all pivots on that. But
It really does. Gosh, the burn. I'm still putting salve on it from last season. So one more guy wide receiver real quick. Alec Pierce, the second-year guy in Indianapolis, his over prop is 550 yards at -115 at Caesars. We know that he's in line to be the wide receiver 2 on this Colts offense, and I know that you're taking the under on Anthony Richardson's passing yard line. So does this affect how effective you think Alec Pierce is gonna be?
So, I mean, I guess if I were gun to my head, I had to take a choice on this, I would take the over. But honestly, I am staying so far away from all Colts props right now, especially after this recent news, because ideally you'd say, oh, well, Anthony Richardson, he's going to be mobile, but he's going to have to throw to somebody, especially with the threat of Jonathan Taylor. But what if there is no threat of Jonathan Taylor? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, what are you going to do? So I am concerned in general about all of the Colts and the health of that organization, how hard Jonathan Taylor would even play if he played, if he will play, what in the world is going on? Because the idea that they're having a spat is just so bizarre to me. And maybe it's because I buy into the super smiley, happy Jonathan Taylor. But when you watched his interviews after that killer season that he had, he was like Mr. Americana. I just love football, love his team. He was such a joyful player, such a joyful runner. What has happened in that organization? And it kind of makes me wonder, was there more to Andrew Luck retiring than just hey, this is the right decision for my family? Is this a Houston Texans situation or a Washington Commanders situation? Is there something dirty? I don't know, but I don't like it. So I'm staying away from Colts props. But 550 is a very small number. Yeah. And he's a wide receiver too. And even with, me thinking that Anthony Richardson is going to go under his passing yards prop, Alec Pierce can easily clear that.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. And it's funny that you mentioned Jonathan Taylor's personality change, because the pictures of him that have come out over the past couple days, he looks like a completely different person. He's just stone-faced, stoic, just kind of arms crossed. I think that you might be right that there's something going on much deeper in that organization.
Something unquantifiable. We don't know what it is. And when we bet, we try most of the time to look at all the stats and the numbers and whatever, but then there's also an element of gut. There has to be an element of gut. Otherwise, first of all, what fun is it? Second, that's how it works. This is not we do not play these games on paper. There is something there. Last week, I put a baseball bet out and I said, look, the Angels have to win this game, because if they don't, it's going to be really freaking embarrassing, because they just decided not to trade Shohei Ohtani and instead started being buyers. They better not lose to the Tigers. That would be the worst thing ever. They have to win. And of course, they swept the Tigers. And yes, it's the Tigers, but they swept them. They covered the run line. And so sometimes there's just that, even though the pitchers looked evenly matched, their ERAs were the same, you just know there's an extra thing. There is something weird about the Indianapolis Colts.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And to be a fly on the wall in that organization right now would, oh my gosh, the amount of tell-alls that we could write if we were flies on the wall in that organization. So moving on to running backs, Tyler Algier. Everybody seems to be so off of him because of the addition of Bijan, and Bijan's going to do this. He's going to be a receiver. He's going to get all the snaps, blah, 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 blah. His Algier's over prop is 480 and a half. I think that even if you are high on Bijan, that you know that he's going to have to be spelled, that Algier is still going to have to come in there and take some reps. And he did really well, especially from a yards per carry average last year. So do you see Atlanta allowing him to hit this prop, or do you see them phasing Algier out of the mix?
I mean, Algier's going to hit this prop easily. He had 1,000-yard season last year.
In 10 games.
In 10 games. Exactly. When they finally came to their senses and decided to use him. Why would they not use all the weapons that they have? You are not going to completely run down Bijan Robinson. He cannot literally do everything. And they've already said they're going to use him in all these creative ways and all these creative packages. There's plenty of ways for Algier to be involved, and you have to keep your running backs healthy. You are not going to drive Bijan Robinson into the ground. You have a perfectly capable, not even capable, an above average running back right there that's already done the work for you, that has proven himself. So we know we're not excited about the quarterback situation. It could certainly get better. We could all be surprised. They're going to need to lead with that run game. And what were they? Second in the league as far as run last year? Rushing yards?
They were second in total, or in percentage, or total, and first in percentage, something like that. But
something like that. This is a run first team, which is to say this is a run first team, even more so than the Eagles. So yeah, why would you not? Just yes.
Yeah, 480 seems just like an incredibly low number.
I actually am a little concerned that we're a little too high on Bijan, to be honest. But
are you? Okay, tell me about that.
Because just a little bit. I mean, a first round pick for a rookie. I'm not saying he can't do it, but it's not often that happens. I'm not saying it won't. But they do have Algier. And maybe they're planning to use him a lot more than we think they are. They could be seems long term with Bijan. I'm not going to say, I just haven't taken one single share of Bijan, even though I love him.
It does seem like you're taking Robinson kind of at his ceiling, and as talented as he is, he has to deliver like that top 3. Yeah, no,
remember when everyone was overdrafting Travis Etienne?
Yes.
His rookie season. And I was like, I don't know. They've still got James. Not that James Robinson's so great, but like, and he got injured. And obviously we can't predict injury, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I haven't pulled the trigger yet.
And I feel like all the training camp highlights that I've seen of Bijan so far have been of him running routes and catching passes.
Receiving.
So
that's why I think, and they don't have a lot of okay, yeah, they have Pitts, they have Drake London, but the way that they could unleash him as a secret weapon is way more in that receiving game. And if I were them, I wouldn't be giving him tough goal line carries. I wouldn't be giving him the tough runs. I would try to he would run, but this is like my same concern with Tony Pollard. Guys, come on, Cowboys. You need to get a Leonard Fournette or a Zeke in there, because until you do, I cannot be high on Pollard like everybody else is, because I am seriously concerned that he is not the kind of running back that should be a bell cow running back, like the way they used to treat Zeke. Zeke is a pass blocking running back. His value to the team is not just in his efficiency like everybody on fantasy wants to see, and that value translates to Tony Pollard's value. Tony Pollard was so good because Zeke was there to do a lot of the tough work. So it's all about how it packages up, and I think that could be the same for Bijan and Algier. And if Algier could give you as many fantasy points and as many fantasy yards as someone like Zeke, then he's going to smash that prop.
Yeah, I think so too. And you make such a good point. I mentioned it in the news portion about Zeke visiting the Patriots, that he is so good at pass blocking. I know, I would cry. I would cry,
not
literally.
To the Patriots, but okay.
This year has already been so traumatizing with free agent signings after DeAndre Hopkins to the Titans, taking over my Treylon Burks wide receiver 1 fantasy. And now if Zeke goes to New England, I'm just going to cry. But he is so good in pass blocking that all the fantasy analysts who just look at numbers and efficiency and things like that aren't looking at it in terms of real life football. And he has so much to offer in real life football. So I'm with you. I wish he would come back to Dallas. But I'm going to switch to quarterbacks. I've kept you for so long because you are such a pleasure to talk to, and I just love picking your brain. So let's hit Patrick Mahomes, right? His line is pretty high. It's 4,650 and a half passing yards at -112 at FanDuel. So we all know that he's Patrick Mahomes, but close to 5,000 passing yards, kind of with that mishmash island of misfit toys wide receiver room that he has, is a high line to set. So do you think that the Mahomes magic happens again?
Well, he's done it in 3 of 5 seasons, including each of the last 2. And last year we thought he couldn't do it because he lost Tyreek Hill. We also thought Tyreek Hill couldn't do it because he lost Patrick Mahomes. Turns out they're both unicorns. I want to say bet against it, but I've learned my lesson. Just don't bet against Patrick Mahomes. I have to say, there's plenty of opportunities for shootouts in their schedule too, right?
Yes.
You look at who they're going to be playing, when they're going to be playing them. It feels like you're going to get some random Mahomes magic. And part of what makes Mahomes so magical is the fact that now you really don't even know who he's going to throw the ball to. Who is it going to? It doesn't matter. It'll be a shovel pass. Okay, it's Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is the wide receiver one. That's why we're willing to take him in the first round. But after that, is it Sky Moore? Is it Marquez Valdez-Scantling? Who is it going to be? It could be anybody. And I think he likes to show off, and it's going to take people by surprise. And eventually those yards are going to accumulate because they're not going to do it with the ground game. They're not.
No,
Okay.
I don't. Not with Deneric Prince getting all the work in training camp and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Pacheco working off to the side.
Jerick McKinnon. That's the other receiver you guys need to grab because he targets Jerick McKinnon. And that is such a value right now in drafts. And that's going to add up to receiving yards for Patrick Mahomes too. So, yeah, I mean, I hate to say it because I haven't been as high on Patrick Mahomes, but I finally have to come around and say, yeah, I'm not saying he's winning the Super Bowl again, but I would not bet against him.
Yeah, you can't count him out. And I learned my lesson on that last year as well, brutally on Twitter. So I'm with you. I can't bet against him. But Jen, I've taken up too much of your time. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, will you let everybody know where to find you and all your awesome content?
Yeah, you can find me at si.com. I write for fantasy and betting. Occasionally you'll hear me on SiriusXM. And yeah, follow me on the socials at Jen Piacenti.
I can attest. Wonderful content. You guys are missing out if you're not following Jen. Thank you so much. I hope to have you back soon.
See you soon.
See ya. All right, guys. That was today's episode of Get It Proppin'. And hopefully we have many more of those as the NFL season gets closer. But we're going to jump right into the AFC East team win totals because we've mentioned time and time again that this division is crazy stacked. I think after the Patriots' 2-decade dominance, that it's finally over. And this is really anybody's game right now. So the Bills are currently sitting with a 10.5 win total. The Dolphins are at 9.5. The Jets are 9.5. And the Patriots are actually the odd man out at 7.5. So let's just talk about some of these win totals and how we see it playing out. As I mentioned, the Bills were 10.5. The over is -130 on BetMGM. I think people might be a little bit too high on the Bills, to be totally honest. They've got the seventh toughest, that's a tongue twister, strength of schedule based on last year's win total. And looking at their schedule, I'm really only seeing a few games that are confident wins. They open the season with the Jets, and I'm actually marking that as a loss. I think that the Jets defense is one of, if not the best in the league. They added Will McDonald to Quinnen Williams to bolster their pass rush. And the Bills have a lot of holes in their offensive line. You can read more about that in Dan Malin's offensive line rankings over in the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide. But spoiler alert, they are not ranked very high. I'm just worried that combination of the Jets pass rush and mean secondary, that they're going to have problems moving the ball. And I have them down to lose that first game. After that, I can probably see some easy wins against the Raiders, the Commanders, Giants, Patriots, Bucks, possibly the Chargers and Broncos, but it really feels like a lot of these games are toss-ups that could come down to the final possession. The Bengals always play them hard, as do the Chiefs. Then they've got a matchup against the NFC champion Eagles. They've got Dallas, who has one of the best defenses in the league. And the Dolphins defense improved tremendously. I think even with the loss of Jalen Ramsey, if he comes back by the time that matchup rolls around, he's going to be really tough. And Vic Fangio is now the Dolphins defensive coordinator. So it's possible that the Bills squeeze the over, but it is not something that I feel confident enough to bet on. There are just too many variables and too many holes, honestly, that these other teams have filled that the Bills really neglected to take care of. They really didn't get a wide receiver too. I mean, we've been high on Dalton Kincaid, but are we expecting him to go in and fill that wide receiver 2 role? Can he do it as a rookie? I think he's going to be fine in fantasy as a rookie tight end, but as a real life difference maker, we haven't seen enough. So if I'm betting, I'm going to take the under actually. And I don't even like doing that because we can't ever count out Josh Allen. I think this matchup or this over under total is one that I'm just steering clear of uh, totally, to be honest. So up next, we've got the Dolphins. The 9.5 over is -110 on FanDuel. So people are kind of split as far as what they think the Dolphins are going to do this season. Part of that revolves around Tua Tagovailoa's health. He has dealt with injury over and over, but seeing him in training camp today, it kind of looks like he put on a little bit of weight, like he was more sturdy, like he could control himself and maybe move a little bit better. So the Dolphins are a team that I'm very bullish on this season. As we mentioned in the Bills breakdown, their secondary was a huge liability for them last year, and they really took huge steps to improve it with the addition of Jalen Ramsey. They've got a stout defensive line, and they added Vic Fangio, who's a defensive magician. We kind of forget last season as well that 5 of their 8 losses last year came by 1 score or less. And with that defensive improvement, they should be able to win some of these games that they otherwise would have lost. We forget also they missed basically 5 games with their starting quarterback as well. The crux of this line does come down to the health of Tua Tagovailoa ultimately. And I worry that they didn't do enough to improve their offensive line to prevent him from taking big hits. But if the offseason training that he did, learning how to fall, doing jujitsu, learning how to release the ball faster, if he learned that enough to help him, he should be a lot better off and not take big hits. But then again, it only takes 1 big hit. That said, I think that the Dolphins can hit this mark, and I'm going to take the over. I'm pretty bullish on Miami this year. Now to the Patriots. Oh, the Patriots. The 7.5 over is plus 120 on BetMGM. People are not high on New England at all, even with the addition of Bill O'Brien as offensive coordinator, even, kicking out the pencil puppet Matt Patricia. The Patriots also haven't won fewer than 7 games since 2000, which historically is a pretty good line. But I think this finally may be the year that it happens again. Their receiving core is kind of makeshift. They've got a third-year quarterback who is struggling, coming off a horrible year, to be honest, and they're playing again in a tough division. If you look at the current game line throughout the season, the Patriots are actually only favored in 3 of their 17 games. Yes, you heard that right. 3 of their 17 games. They have the 3rd toughest strength of schedule based on last year's winning percentage. And although we can't count out Bill Belichick because he is a master, he's a Hall of Fame coach, he's done wonders with this team before, I just don't think that they are going to have the same kind of luck that they've had in past years. Now, Christian Gonzalez could really help working in the zone scheme, but it is still hard to find wins in this beefed up division. I mean, you've got the Eagles week 1, which I've got as a loss, the Jets week 3 as a loss. I've got week 4 Cowboys as a loss, week 7 Bills as a loss, week 8, week 13, week 14, week 15, all the way through week 18, to be honest. So it's hard to find wins on the schedule. I know that Coop is out today, and I hate to talk trash when he's not here to defend himself, but I just don't think that this Patriots team has what it takes to come out of this division on top this year. So finally, we have everyone's favorite hard knock team, the Jets. The Jets' current line is at 9.5. The over is -20 on BetMGM. And I think that this Aaron Rodgers-led Jets team can see a resurgence this year with all of their new pieces. The betting markets are kind of polarized on this one, with the odds nearly identical for the over and the under. But training camp hype is already in full swing, with Garrett Wilson being touted as the next coming of Devontae Adams. And although I think we should kind of pump the brakes on that because he is still young and developing, the talent of Wilson and Rodgers as a tandem is going to be a nightmare to cover. We've already talked about how good their defense is, how good their secondary is, how good that line is. And with that combination of an efficient offense and a shutdown D, I actually have them conservatively at 11 wins. So I think that they easily hit the over here. Anybody in the chat, if you guys have any more comments or questions regarding the AFC East, I would love to hear them. I think that this line actually could go up if they add Dalvin Cook into the mix. So I'm grabbing it while I can right now at that 9.5 line. So that is it for our show today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We've got a ton of stuff coming up this week. We've got more Alarm Fantasy Football. We've got Getting Buzzed with Howard Bender. We've got a Better Morning every morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. Then we have another show of Britt's Fantasy Blitz on Friday. Coming up today, we've also got from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern, the Fantasy Football Game Show from Front Yard Fantasy. 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, the Better Sports Betting Show with Dan Servadidio and Howard Bender. And then 5 to 6 p.m., we have the MLB DFS live stream with James Grande and John Impemba. So we hope you stick around for that. Articles to watch for this week. The coaching system articles are all complete. They are all out and part of the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide. The cheat sheet has been released as well as the much awaited tight end strategy series from the tight end whisperer himself and new girl dad, Mr. Andrew Cooper. To get that, go to fantasyalarm.com/draft guide. Go to fantasyalarm.com/cheat sheet if you want to just get the cheat sheet by itself, or go to fantasyalarm.com/all-pro to get everything plus a 7-day trial. That's all sports. That's all of our tools. Our draft guide is included. Our cheat sheet is included. Our Discord is included. We've got it all. So make sure you go check that out. Please like and subscribe this video, and tune back in on Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern for another episode of Britt's Fantasy Blitz. Thanks for getting blitzed, and I'll see you Friday.